Today we're stepping into the next chapter of human space exploration. With Artemis II, we're not just returning to the moon, we're laying the groundwork for humanity's future beyond Earth. This mission is about more than just exploration, it's about what's to come. Joining me today is Dr. Clive Neal, a leading lunar scientist and professor at the University of Notre Dame, whose work with Apollo samples have helped shape how we understand the moon and its role into getting us to Mars. From the legacy of the Apollo to the future of Artemis, we're diving into what makes this moment so important and what it could mean for all of us. So if you've ever looked up at the moon and wondered what's next, today, we're going to find out. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Please welcome to the Truth Be Told studios for the first time, Dr. Clive Neal. Well, I don't know who's in space or not, but I decided to give my one of my favorite people a call. How you doing, Dr. Neal?
Oh, I'm living the dream, literally. So
that well, I bet right now you are. And how exciting is this launch that has taken place? And as we can see behind me, one of the shots that was taken from Artemis, it's like you said, it's a dream. It's for the people that are fascinated with space and all the sci-fi movies. This is something that is taking that sci-fi movie into reality.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, for those who can't remember the Apollo landings, I always say everybody deserves an Apollo moment.
Right.
And now we are getting close to several generations that haven't had their Apollo moment to getting their Artemis moment. And this mission, it almost gave me a heart attack because they holded the countdown at 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh!
So that was yeah. But then when it launched, I got to admit I got a little choked up.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Then everything has been going swimmingly well, and I can remember again reliving the Apollos before the landing when they went around the moon, and my mum freaking out and actually praying that these astronauts would be kept safe because we lost comms with them. And when they went behind the moon, I had that flashback. It was quite bizarre, but yeah, this is a good it's a good feeling.
So before we get into the actual Artemis journey here, so people that may not know who Dr. Clive Neal is, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're in a way you are involved in this Artemis journey.
Well, I was born and raised in the UK, in England, and did all my education in traditional geology. And then when I got my PhD last century, I will say, basically I fled the country. And the reason I fled the country is because I got a postdoc that I never applied for to study the Apollo samples.
Wow.
And I said, 2 years in America, that will be fun. And that was... This July will be 40 years ago.
Wow.
So I got involved in studying the moon in 1986 with a postdoc I never applied for but got offered, and figured, as I did, always took a lot of time. 2 years in America, that'll be fun. And what a blast. I have learned so much. And I will continue to say that America really is the land of opportunity, because I would not have had this career if I'd have stayed in the UK.
Wow.
So as I say, when I say I'm living the dream, I'm living the dream, man.
I love it.
So that's why I went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and Professor Larry Taylor was responsible for bringing me to America to do that postdoc. I spent 4 years there. And then got a job at the University of Notre Dame, where I've been ever since.
Wow.
So you can see by the office behind me, it is a well-lived-in office.
Have you read everything in that office?
Oh yeah, at least 3 times. But I know I even have the books I had during my undergraduate still here because I can't throw away books.
Yeah. It is hard to get rid of something like that.
Yeah.
Well, Artemis, as we were talking about with the Apollo, I'm just going to jump right in. Mm-hmm. And for those who may not really fully grasp it, but what makes Artemis II fundamentally different from Apollo's mission beyond just being the next chapter?
Well, again, Apollo, and I say this a lot, and I get some criticism for it. Apollo was great because it showed us how not to do human space exploration.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Apollo had no long-term goal, whereas Artemis and the Moon to Mars program has this goal of moving humanity out into the solar system. And well, why should we do that? I hear this all the time. We've got so many issues down here. How can we afford to do this? And I say to those, you're doing it all wrong. You need to look at NASA's budget, which is about maybe a little under 0.5% of the national budget, as an investment in the future of this country. And what I tell my students is we go up there to make life better down here. And I always pick up my cell phone, and as you can see, this is my cell phone, and I say, thank you, Apollo. Because without miniaturization of electronics that was desperately needed at that time, look where it led.
Yeah.
The discoveries that are led because we did human space exploration. And what's in the next chapter? That's what I'm excited about, is how are we going to see in this long-term goal of actually getting humans to Mars, where we've got to solve the issues of bone density loss, muscle fatigue. And if we can go to the moon and figure out that, 1/6 gravity is enough to negate all that, then we've got a Mars transfer vehicle that could be, giving you 1/6 gravity rather than 1G.
Wow.
So that when the soggy humans get to Mars, they're not useless.
Right.
We can see how useless they are when they come back from station.
I mean, that's a big difference going to the moon to Mars, because once you're in Mars, you can't, 4 days later.
No. I mean, and so that's why we got to get it right at the moon.
Yeah.
And again, the benefits of getting it right at the moon, we're already realizing, looking at job growth in these private companies that have been involved with in the Artemis program. So this is something my students get excited about, because they have a future in industry, not traditional NASA or Boeing or Lockheed Martin, but now you've got SpaceX, Blue Origin, and then all the intuitive machines and the astrobotics and the Fireflies that are all doing exciting things. And wow, I wish I was 30 years younger.
I know I was listening the other day to one of the news networks, and one of the former astronauts was like, "Oh my gosh, I having FOMO so bad right now," because he was no longer, in the program, but but still, I'm sure as someone that has gone to space, my gosh. It's
absolutely brilliant. So just to close the loop on this, this is the beginning of something that is going to be much, much bigger than Apollo. There's talk about permanent human presence on the moon, just as we have a permanent human presence in low Earth orbit right now. Hopefully that will continue once the International Space Station is retired, shall we say? But this is the ambition of our nation through the space policy that is unique, because it has transcended two administration changes. I mean, admittedly, one of those was back to the one that originally put it together. But this is something that is a long-term vision for this country that I think will allow this country to reap the benefits of, we go up there to make life better down here.
One big question that, I mean, I've thought about this, and I'm sure many other people have thought this. Why is it taking so long?
Oh, okay. Why is it taking so long? It's a confluence of things. Is that it's fatigue in terms of why are we going back to somewhere we've already been? And as I say, we've been there. We have been there, but we've not done that. Sorry, President Obama, because he quoted that. But we've explored much less than 5% of the surface of the moon.
Right.
We know there's so much more there now from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and the other missions that are up there now. The Korean mission and the Indian mission, Chandrayaan-2 for India and Korean Pathfinder Lunar Orbiter for Korea. I mean, it's phenomenal discoveries being made, making me realize how little we know about our moon. So it's that idea of getting humanity out into the solar system and learning from history so that we don't create the mistakes of the past. We have a long-term goal in our space policy, but also we learn how to use the local resources and the local materials in a way that is not detrimental to future use.
Yeah.
And so we've got a lot of lessons from history. And again, another thing I tell my students, if you don't understand and learn from history, you will repeat it. So we don't want to do that.
Yeah. One thing that I'm excited, because I've seen them in museums, but you've had the opportunity to work with them, but you've had lunar samples, which is very exciting. I mean, some people look at it and go, okay, it's just a piece of metal. But what are some of the biggest unanswered questions about like the moon that still keep scientists like you up at night and with these samples?
Let me just say there's two ways to look at lunar science. Mm-hmm. Okay, everybody says, "Oh, you're just doing stuff that really doesn't matter."
Right.
But there's two ways, and the Europeans have really got the European Space Agency is they have exploration focused science and exploration enabled science. All right, so exploration enabled science was all the ideas of looking at the formation of the moon and the history of the moon, because the exploration focused science sent humans there and they brought back 382 kilograms of rocks. Okay, and so we are now using that exploration enabled scientific return from the rocks to talk about exploration focused things such as resource extraction. So there is an interplay between the what I would say the pure and applied science. We still really don't know. We have models of how the moon formed, but we don't have the definitive data or the smoking gun, if you like, to say yes, that's definitely it. So yes, we've done a lot of study, and as a geologist, I will say we will always need more rocks. Because you can never have too many rocks. Right. So that is something to look at. But it comes back to why do we go up there, and we brought back these samples, and what we are learning is now that we're looking at human permanence, we're learning how to look at those samples in a way that will enable that. So looking at geotechnical properties of lunar regolith. What's its bearing capacity? Wow. How can that be used as raw material for 3D printing? Right. These are the things that are going on now that has gone beyond the how did the moon form? What does space weathering look like in a rock? And what are the intricate processes, which is fundamental to understanding the geotechnical properties of the regolith. If we didn't do that exploration enabled science or that pure science, we would lose our understanding of why the regolith behaves in different ways depending upon how long it's been exposed to the space weather environment. So that's the interplay that we're seeing now, that is really important for, I would say, if we do have a permanent human presence, creating jobs. You need logistics. You need commodities to keep the humans alive. Maybe refuel spacecraft. We've learned a lot about our moon since Apollo. We know that there's water ice there. We don't know if it's in sufficient quantities to be useful because we haven't got the data needed. So we know what we need, and so for example, if you go after that to find out if it can sustain humans, just think how much pure science you would get from mining that material and using that material and analyzing that material. It's a win-win is the way I look at it. So I'm really, as I say, completely excited about the future and really wishing I was younger.
I bet. Me too, but for a whole different reason.
Yep. Yeah.
When you were mentioning the ice, I want to go back to that. But first of all, with technology, the way it's advanced since, 1960s, I mean, it's like really unbelievable. Like there's really no way to comprehend how much we've advanced in technology. How has that helped find new things about the metals, the rocks that were brought back? What has been, even in the last 10 years, that you've discovered from the technology through these samples?
Well, when the samples were originally brought back, the moon was considered to be bone dry. All right, it was very dry. There was no volatiles. Everything was anhydrous. Well, in 2008, a paper was published in the journal Nature that used the Apollo 15, some Apollo 15 volcanic glasses and some Apollo 17 volcanic glasses, and proved they contain water and other volatiles because the technology, the microanalytical technology had advanced so much, you could actually take a less than a millimeter diameter bead and do a transect across that bead to show that water was concentrated in the center and it had diffused out before it was frozen in. It was diffusion profile. So you went to the rim of that bead and there was lower volatile contents because before it froze in the vacuum that is the lunar exosphere, it was actually losing volatiles due to pressure release through the liquid glass as it was being formed. So that changed the paradigm completely. Lunar Prospector and Clementine, two missions from the 1990s, gave us tantalizing hints that there was billions of tons of water ice, was the quote from Bill Feldman in one of his papers, that at both poles of the moon, based upon the Lunar Prospector data. So we didn't know that was there during Apollo. It was hypothesized that it should be there, but we didn't know it was there. And so we now have a lunar water cycle that we didn't know about during Apollo. We can see the Chandrayaan-1, India's first orbital mission, had the U.S. instrument Moon Mineralogy Mapper, and it was just basically a spectrometer that could look at the surface, and it showed that as the Terminator came across certain areas of the moon, there would be an OH band that would suddenly start to come up, show, and then as the dawn broke, it went back towards the poles, and it's this diurnal shift. Didn't know anything about that during Apollo either.
Wow.
So and I could go on and on and on about the discoveries that have been made because of different missions, and the more we look and the different places we go, the more we find out.
That's what I think is so exciting. Humans or earthly beings, us earthly beings, that we're so fascinating with space, because I think of the unknown. And I remember during Star Trek, what does he say? The last frontier, because it really is. It's such a big
It's a big frontier.
Huge frontier. But when we talk about the ice and the water on the moon, okay, if you live here on Earth, you're like, oh, okay, it's raining today.
Yep.
And water hits the ground, and if it's cold enough, it freezes. And people are like, well, how the hell? First of all, you can see the moon. There's no clouds. There's no rain.
Yep.
Where does this water come from? And how would there ever be enough to sustain? I mean, some places here on Earth, we have to ship it in. So how is that possible?
Well, again, these are the hypotheses that are out there. They are ancient cometary impacts that got trapped there. Is it from during the peak of lunar volcanism? We now know that there's volatiles in those magmas. Is this basically degassing of the magmas that were trapped in these cold traps? The interesting thing is that if you look at water in a vacuum, it is actually, ice is stable in a vacuum if the temperature is below 110 Kelvin. So what's 110 Kelvin is minus 163 Celsius.
Ooh.
So, and we know from Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that a lot of these cold traps, these craters at the poles that never see sunlight, have annual temperatures that do not get above 110 Kelvin. So that's the idea. And then we looked at the Lunar Orbiter Laser Altimeter on LRO that was firing infrared shots down and then measuring the reflectance back from the surface to get altitude and get slopes and topography. That over in some of these permanently shadowed craters, they got much brighter reflections than they did elsewhere, and that was attributed to the surface water ice.
Wow.
So it's getting tantalizing now. All these orbital data sets that are showing us there's water there, but we don't know if we know there's a potential resource, but we don't know if it's a reserve, i.e. we can actually get to it, we can actually extract it, we can refine it, and we can use it, and this is where Geology Geek comes in, at a profit. It is economically viable. And that is the thing, is that the reserves on the moon, there are no reserves on the moon because we don't have the data, but we also don't have the demand for those commodities from those resources.
Wow.
So until we get that, and this is why it's a bold step by the United States to say permanent human presence on the moon, because they will need to live off the land in order to do that. So it's going to create that demand and potential, and it's going to give it value. How much? We don't know.
Well, living off the land, but what are some of the biggest challenges, scientific challenges, in turning the moon into a place for humans? I mean, we know that we can go to space and we live in a little capsule or the space station, so we know it's possible to build, have some type of structure in space, with oxygen, and we can bring in food and water. But what are some of the scientific challenges that? Do we have time?
We do. Well, I mean, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. We've got to understand the environment. Right. The big thing about soggy humans on the moon is radiation, as meteoroid impact, and thermal swings. So if Apollo measured the maximum day and the minimum night temperatures, you're looking at about a 300 degrees Celsius swing.
Oh my God.
All right. You look at the radiation environment, we're outside the Earth's magnetosphere. So we get no magnetic field protection. There's no atmospheric protection. That means that micrometeoroids come in at terminal velocity. So if you're going to have a soggy human on the surface of the moon, he needs to be buried, or she needs to be buried under regolith. How much regolith? Calculations suggest about 3 meters. But that then protects you from micrometeoroid impacts, a lot of the radiation, both primary and secondary. As the primary radiation comes in, it can cause secondary radiation through interaction with the regolith. And it also gives you then, as I said, thermal swings. It gives you stability. It gives you protection.
Wow.
So radiation, thermal swings, micrometeoroid impact. And so that will be where the humans will be. They'll be pretty much underground for the most part, but they will be going out because of exploration. Things need to be looked at, and they will be doing extravehicular activities, as they call it. So it is possible. We know the environment. We know what the dangers are, and we've got ways to engineer protections for those dangers.
Wow. I hope, I'm sure you do, we see in our lifetime that happen, to see actually people living on the moon, or at least scientific scientists and astronauts living on the moon. That would be so exciting. But time will tell. Time will tell.
Well, again, there are entrepreneurs that want to see this happen.
True.
Jeff Bezos being one of them. And then you got Elon Musk wants to see it on Mars.
Yeah.
But there's an old German rocket engineer called Kraft Ericke that in his posthumous paper, it was published after he'd passed, made this quote: "If God, and I'm paraphrasing, if God intended humans to be a spacefaring species, He'd have given them a moon." So we learn how to live and work productively off Earth in our own back garden, and that becomes a blueprint for how we do it elsewhere in the solar system. But making sure we take deliberate steps to do it properly. And that's why it's a long-term vision, which we now finally have, and we didn't have during Apollo.
Wow.
And this is what gives me hope that this country will stay the course. And another part of the reason is this strong commercial sector, space commercial sector, that is also supporting this effort. And it's a very different world to Constellation when George Bush Jr., when we had the vision for space exploration to go back to the moon, onto Mars and beyond. But then it was all funded by the government and it became an unfunded mandate, and it died. So,
could we realistically sustain a lunar economy before attempting like deep space missions, or does Mars kind of force that timeline?
Well, Mars doesn't force the timeline, only from old people that want to see it in their lifetime. All right. So if we don't get it right, Mars will be a one and done at best. Because it is so incredibly much farther away.
Yeah.
So let's take the time and let our grandkids and great grandkids have their Mars moment.
Yeah.
Just as we have our Apollo and Artemis moments. I think that's something that I know I won't see humans on Mars. But again, we have a moon. We can learn to do this. And if we do it right and we set up the infrastructure that's going to be needed for a permanent moon base, then we can stimulate commercial activity.
Wow.
And so NASA becomes the anchor tenant, and this is why the ignition call a couple of weeks ago was so refreshing. We are going to signal our demand. We will be the anchor tenant, but we want to become one customer of many.
Yeah.
Setting up that initial infrastructure is going to be critical in that, and it's exciting to see what work has already been done on that, and there's going to be some new stuff coming out on that shortly.
When you definitely, I was going to ask you if you thought the moon was primarily going to be a destination or an infrastructure, and I'm glad you answered that. But I feel like it's going to be like a Club Med or a 5-star hotel, only for the rich for many years. I feel like, because right now, even just going into space, it's either somebody that has a lot of money to put into it, or somebody that's famous. So, but I think going forward, it still excites people to even know we have the opportunity in the future. And like I said, in Mars in my lifetime, I don't. It's probably not going to happen, but it is exciting to know that generations to come that's an option.
And again, I think our responsibility is to lay that firm foundations so generations to come can do it. And we learn from the history of not going back to the moon before now.
Mm-hmm.
I often daydream about, well, what happens if we didn't stop at Apollo 17? Where would we be now if we were now on Apollo 189?
Right.
And where, how far would we have gone with that? But the time wasn't right. The commercial sector wasn't ready. And I think now the time is right. We know an awful lot more about our moon. We're learning more about Mars. We're learning more about asteroids. So, yeah, I think that having, if Artemis II splashes down, was it Saturday morning early, then it was successfully, then we are a step closer to seeing the 13th human on the moon.
Wow. That's just so exciting. And I was old enough to see 2 of the space shuttles, explode. And so and it is, it's a scary and, can be tragic.
Yep. Space is dangerous.
Yeah, it is. But luckily there's a lot of people that the excitement overtakes the fear, and in these brave people that go up and risk their lives to, like you said, the stepping stone for humanity. But one thing I wanted to ask, because here on Earth we fight for land. We don't have to get too political, but we're seeing a renewed global competition when it comes to the moon and even Mars. How do you view the role of like China and other nations in shaping the future of lunar exploration? How do we not only make it better for America, but for the world itself?
Well, we learn from history. International competition in human space exploration does not give you an enduring program. And when you have international cooperation, such as with the ISS, so over 2 decades of humans in low Earth orbit because of cooperation. So that's history. History teaches that.
Yeah. Cooperate
rather than compete in the international arena, you achieve much more. And it's may not be politically popular to say stuff like that. But I'm a great believer in science diplomacy. Again, you look at history. We were in competition with the Soviet Union, and Soviet Union also went to the moon robotically and brought back 3 samples 3 different times. And in the early 1980s, there were sample exchanges between Soviet Union and the United States.
Wow.
For each one of the lunar missions, they got some Apollo samples. They got much more Apollo sample than we got lunar, because they brought back less than half a kilo total. So we brought back 382 kilos. So yeah, they got more of it. But then you see the Apollo Soyuz mission. Then you start to see, the idea of American astronauts on the Mir space station.
Yeah,
and then you get the International Space Station And this is science diplomacy in action. China has brought back 2 sample returns from the moon. Wouldn't it be good if and when President Trump goes there, there is a sample exchange that
would be amazing.
That could open the doors for dialogue. And so scientists talk to each other. I talk to a lot of Chinese scientists. We collaborate. I cannot use any of my NASA funding to do that. Otherwise, I go to jail. So I don't want to go to jail. But there is open communication between the scientists, and I just see. I'm going great believer in history because a lot of history is behind me now. So you can see my enthusiasm for sample exchanges that will allow communication between people that don't communicate properly. So when you don't have any communication, you start to make stuff up and blow things out of proportion. So communication is key. And again, science is the way to achieve that communication. And I just lay that out there for your audience to say, look, this is what happened with the Soviet Union.
Right.
And here we are again. So let's take a look at history and look at what works and think about the possibilities if US and China got together and said, we are going to go to the moon together.
Yeah,
what
that
could
would be amazing.
Achieved? What could be achieved? And I think that it's as I say, you learn from history, otherwise you're destined to repeat it.
I know when President Kennedy, really said by the end of the 60s that a man would be walking on the moon. Yes, it was very competitive. That was, and they wanted to be the first people to walk on the moon. Now that we've done that, and like you said, the Mars is next, and there's a huge universe and galaxies out there that we are discovering all the time. I think it is time to drop the competitiveness and start working together, because like you said, we can make a huge difference on humanity. And I want to ask you, I was going to say if Artemis, but we're going to put it out there that the landing is going to be great and Artemis is successful, but it's establishing a long-term presence again into the moon and going into space. How can this reshape life on Earth, like economically and scientifically, or maybe even culturally?
Well, it's interesting you raise culture, because there's a lot of indigenous peoples that view the moon as a deity.
Yeah,
and their beliefs tend to get ignored a lot. And the Outer Space Treaty, 1967, by the United Nations, is a consensus-based treaty that is really, it's full of principles. And if you look at the Artemis Accords from the US, they are all based upon the Outer Space Treaty. China has also signed. 105 countries in the world have signed and ratified the Outer Space Treaty. And it says that the moon and other celestial bodies are the province of all mankind. All right? So it's free to everybody.
That's great.
You cannot, there is no national appropriation of land allowed on any of those. So it makes perfect sense then to go, humanity to go, we all go together. And because this is what whoever crafted the Outer Space Treaty had that in mind, is we don't want to set ourselves up to do the same stuff that's gone on down here for centuries, with feuds over land and battles and wars and this sort of thing. So it's important to think about the fundamental underpinnings of all this, which comes back to that Outer Space Treaty. And I think that the more I've delved into this, and the more that I've read about China's inputs to the UN, they also, in all of their statements, uphold the Outer Space Treaty.
That's great.
Okay, so where's the argument?
Right. But it comes back to, well, we're letting our terrestrial knowledge cloud and our prejudices cloud and our judgments there. But this is come back to my science diplomacy. I thought is that's where communication can be kept open, and that's where we can get stuff done. Yeah, I'm sure you and many others that are listening to this or watching this today, some may not remember, but when President Reagan said, if with all of our conflicts on our Earth, but if there was an extraterrestrial invasion from another world, we're going to need each other. And so, I mean, that wasn't exactly what he said, but it was kind of that.
Yeah.
What he meant.
If we have an asteroid coming into a planet killer. I think there would be pooling of resources there.
Yeah. And so I think this is an opportunity, like you said, to finally bring the world together. I have one question after this, just because it's truth be told, but when the 13th human steps on the moon, as a scientist, what do you hope they discover, and not just scientifically, but symbolically for humanity?
Again, you're looking at the 13th human as being the pathfinder for human permanence on the moon. And that's what I think the 13th human really needs to keep in mind when they go there, is rather than, hey, we've beaten the Soviets, all right, they did come in peace for all mankind. That's great, very good. Doing the same thing this time, but now we're scouting out, okay, what am I looking for here that's going to enable human permanence?
Yeah.
What am I looking for here that's going to enable commercial activity? What am I understanding about the environment that I know needs to be preserved in all these endeavors? So it's the big picture look that we now have through having not done it right the first time, and all the environmental damage and ignoring certain cultures.
Yeah.
We've already done in the past. So again, we can learn from that history too. And this is something that I get passionate about. When we go back to the moon, we all go together. That's the way it's got to be.
Yeah.
And we all go together to make life better down here.
I love it. And the last question, because this is politics, military, and just even people in my own world. As a scientist and a moon lover yourself, what is your thoughts on extraterrestrial life out there?
Oh, are we alone? You look at the number of exoplanets that have been found. It's probably highly unlikely that we're the Goldilocks zone around a star. So, but who knows? And what do extraterrestrials look like? Are they bacteria? Are they something different? Do they look like us? Our imagination is endless, and you can see that in the movies. So, but who knows? How can we be alone when space is so vast?
Yeah,
it's an intriguing question, and I think that depends what your definition of extraterrestrial is.
Yeah. And like you said, it's endless.
Yes.
Yeah, it's endless. I remember years ago I can't remember his name, but he was with NASA, and he was talking about so many of these planets that are being discovered all the time, and all these. He even said, he goes, I can't say no, I can't say yes.
Yep.
All I can say
exactly
is
right.
Yeah. All I can say is it's unlikely we're alone.
Yep. So, yeah, very good. Very good.
All right. Well, sir, you are amazing. I hope you come back again. And
I'd love it. Love it. I thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you.
You too. And I know you don't have any social media, and I know all the fans are probably going to be reaching out to you. But again, Dr.
I'm on Twitter.
You are on Twitter.
X.
Yes. Okay. Well then,
at Prof. Clive Neal.
Perfect. Well, then we're gonna bombard you with questions.
Okay, I shall make sure I look at my Twitter feed.
Perfect. All right,
X
sir.
feed, whatever it's called.
X feed. Well, I still stay Twitter. Yeah, it's hard to, but I appreciate you and thank you for taking the time. I know you have a speaking thing with something like some organization called the United Nations coming up. So.
Yeah. I've got to. Yes, I won't be there to give it in person, so I have to pre-record it. And then I'll be there after it's been aired. But it's a weird confluence of or a train wreck of my schedule. So, schedule. I'm American now.
I know, right? Your schedule. Well, thank you, and thank you everybody for tuning in for this amazing man right here, and we hope you tune in every Friday. You can go to clubparanormal.com. You can watch our YouTube channel. Please subscribe and share the show. There's so much information that Dr. Clive has shared with us today about Artemis and then the amazing moon that we see in our sky all the time, unless you just don't look up and you're looking at your social media. Stop doing that. Look up. But until next time, take care of yourself and each other. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Bye.